I never thought hiring my brother would become the biggest mistake of my life. Looking back now, maybe I was just too naive, too desperate to help him. But that's how it goes when you're the older sibling. You take on the protector role thinking it's your responsibility to help them get their lives together. When my brother Danny came to me, he looked worn out, like life had chewed him up and spat him out. He'd just lost his job for the 3rd time in 2 years and was on the verge of getting evicted. His girlfriend had dumped him, and I could see that familiar look of defeat hanging around his eyes. I'm the successful one in the family, or at least that's how everyone sees it. I run a small but thriving marketing agency. I started it from scratch in my early 20s, and after years of scraping by, things finally took off. Danny was never like that. He was always bouncing from one job to another, never really finding his place. I knew I was making a risky move when I offered him a position at the company. My wife warned me, "Are you sure this is a good idea? You know how Danny can be." I shrugged it off, convincing myself that family sticks together, and besides, everyone deserves a second or, in his case, a 5th chance. Danny started off doing basic admin work, filing paperwork, and handling simple client communications. At first, he seemed grateful, and seeing him finally stable for once made me feel like I was doing the right thing. It was nice having him around, cracking jokes in the break room, reminding me of when we were kids. But soon, the little things started adding up. He'd come in late just by a few minutes at first, but then those minutes stretched into hours. I'd find him on his phone during meetings, swiping through social media like it was his personal break time. I let it slide, chalking it up to him, adjusting to the structured environment. One morning, I walked into the office to find him at my desk, feet up on my chair, bragging to a couple of the newer employees about how he was the boss's brother. It was the kind of attitude I hated, the entitlement that seeped into every word. I pulled him aside later, trying to keep it light, and reminded him to stay professional. He just laughed it off. "Chill, man. It's just a little harmless fun," he said, patting me on the shoulder. Still, I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to embarrass him, especially not in front of the staff. But the line between family and professionalism was starting to blur, and I wasn't sure how to draw it again. Then came the complaints from other employees, subtle at first. Someone mentioned Danny had left early without finishing a project. Another said he'd snapped at them when they asked for help. I felt caught between defending my brother and maintaining a standard of professionalism. One afternoon I overheard 2 of my longest-standing employees talking in the break room. They didn't know I was just around the corner listening. "Man, it's not fair. I bust my ass every day and this guy just waltzes in and out like he owns the place. It's like he thinks being the boss's brother means he doesn't have to do anything," one of them muttered. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. They were right. I'd been turning a blind eye, hoping Danny would get it together on his own. But instead of holding him accountable, I was letting my personal guilt guide my decisions. That night I sat with my wife on the porch, staring at the stars. She sipped her tea, watching me silently as I struggled to put my thoughts into words. "I don't know what to do," I finally admitted. "He's my brother, but he's screwing up everything I've worked for." She put her hand on mine. "You did what you could. You gave him a chance. Sometimes people need to face consequences to grow. Protecting him from them won't help him or you." Her words made sense, but they didn't make it any easier. I wanted Danny to succeed, to find his place. I wanted to believe that he was just going through a rough patch. But deep down, I knew I was only delaying the inevitable. A few days later, I sat Danny down after work. I tried to be as calm as possible, explaining that he needed to start taking the job seriously. He smirked at me, rolling his eyes. "You're overreacting, dude. Everyone loves me. You're just stressing yourself out." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I just looked at him, trying to see the kid I grew up with, the one who used to idolize me, who thought I was the coolest person in the world. Somewhere along the line, that kid had turned into a man who saw me not as a brother, but as a free ride. My silence must have gotten to him because his smirk faded. "All right, I'll try harder," he muttered, but there was no sincerity behind it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept running through the situation in my head, trying to find a way to fix it without hurting anyone. I didn't want to fire my brother, but I also couldn't keep risking the company I'd built from the ground up. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come, that Danny would do something so unforgivable that I'd have no choice but to take drastic action. Things started to unravel faster than I expected. It wasn't just the small things anymore, the missed meetings, the extended lunch breaks, the mysterious absences. It was the way Jake started acting like he owned the place, talking to my employees as if they worked for him. I tried to address it subtly at first. I'd drop by his desk, casually reminding him about company protocols or the importance of setting a good example as a family member. But his reactions were always the same: an easy grin, a dismissive shrug, a quick promise to do better that never materialized into real change. One morning I overheard a conversation in the break room that set my teeth on edge. "So Jake, are you coming to the pitch meeting this Friday?" One of my account managers asked, her tone polite but cautious. She'd been with me from the beginning, a real professional who knew how much each client mattered. Jake just laughed, popping a piece of gum into his mouth. "Nah, I'm not about that corporate grind, I'm more of a big picture guy." I felt a chill run down my spine. A big picture guy. He hadn't even managed a single client account yet. I took a deep breath, trying not to overreact. After all, maybe he was just joking around. Maybe he was trying to fit in, to sound confident. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that he was starting to see my company as his playground. Then came the first real hit. One of our major clients, a long-standing partner who'd been with us for over 5 years, suddenly pulled out of a critical campaign. It came out of nowhere, a polite but firm email thanking us for our services, but stating that they'd decided to take their business elsewhere. I was baffled. We'd just had a great quarterly review with them, and everything had seemed solid. I called the client, trying to salvage the relationship, but the conversation left me cold. "Look, we've just been hearing some concerning things," the client said, their voice tight and uncomfortable. "I don't want to get into specifics, but I think it's better if we part ways now before things get messy." Messy. My company had built its reputation on transparency and trust. I pushed for more details, but they clammed up, only repeating that it was a matter of principle. I hung up, my mind racing. I couldn't shake the suspicion that Jake had something to do with it. He'd been handling some of their lower-level accounts recently, but I couldn't imagine what he could have possibly done to drive them away so suddenly. Then one of my most loyal employees approached me after hours. She looked uncomfortable, like she was weighing whether to speak up at all. "Listen," she started, her eyes darting toward Jake's empty desk. "I didn't want to get involved, but I think you should know Jake's been making some questionable comments about the company to clients, acting like he's in charge, throwing your name around like a bargaining chip." My jaw tightened. "What kind of comments?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder again. "He's been hinting that the company might be changing hands soon, that things are about to get shaken up, and that they should consider other options if they're not ready for it." I felt a rush of anger that I struggled to keep in check. Jake was not just slacking off, he was actively undermining my business, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of my clients. I decided to confront him that evening, catching him just as he was about to leave. He had his jacket slung over his shoulder, car keys in hand, already half checked out for the day. "Hey Jake, we need to talk," I said, stepping into his path. He frowned, looking genuinely puzzled. "What's up, man?" I crossed my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just lost one of our oldest clients today. They said they heard some concerning things. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" His face went blank for a split second, just long enough for me to catch the flicker of panic before he plastered on that easy grin again. "Oh, come on. You know how clients can be. They get spooked over nothing." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Cut the crap, Jake. I've been hearing things too. About you throwing my name around, making it sound like you're running this place. What the hell is going on? His grin slipped his jaw, tightening. For a moment I saw a flash of something I hadn't expected, defiance, maybe even resentment. Chill out, big brother. I'm just trying to get things moving around here. Maybe shake things up a bit. You're always talking about being innovative, right? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He actually thought he was doing me a favor, like he was some kind of visionary, shaking up my carefully built business model. Jake, you're not shaking things up. You're burning bridges, and you're doing it in my name. If this keeps up, we're going to have a serious problem. He scoffed, brushing past me. Relax. You're overreacting. Everything's under control. As he walked out the door, I felt a sinking sensation in my gut. I had a terrible feeling that my brother had crossed a line, and there would be no coming back from it. I just didn't realize how far he'd already gone. It didn't take long for things to go from bad to worse. Jake's behavior wasn't just an annoyance anymore, it was a full-blown threat to my business. A few days after our tense hallway conversation, one of my top project managers, Lisa, came into my office, her face pale and eyes wide. She shut the door behind her and took a deep breath before speaking. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I think you should see this, she said, sliding her phone across my desk. I frowned, picking it up. The screen displayed a series of text messages between Jake and one of our biggest clients. My heart sank as I started reading. Jake, hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up. My brother's company is about to hit a rough patch. Might be a good time to start looking at other agencies, just in case. Client. Really? That's surprising. Is something going on over there? Jake, I'm just saying I've got some insider info. Trust me, it's about to get messy. I can probably set you up with someone better if you're interested. My blood ran cold. I felt my grip on the phone tighten as I scrolled through more of the conversation. It wasn't just a one-time thing. Jake had been quietly planting doubts, laying the groundwork to steal clients right out from under me. Where did you get these? I asked, my voice coming out more strained than I intended. Lisa hesitated. One of the account reps forwarded it to me. They said Jake's been acting strange lately, like he's trying to poach clients behind your back. I didn't want to believe it at first, but this is pretty damning. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. This wasn't just reckless behavior. This was deliberate sabotage. My own brother, the person I'd pulled out of the gutter and given a lifeline, was actively trying to destroy the company I had spent my entire adult life building. I felt a rush of anger so intense it took every ounce of self-control not to hurl the phone across the room. Thank you for bringing this to me, I said, my jaw clenched. I'll handle it. She gave me a sympathetic nod before slipping out of my office, leaving me alone with the bitter realization that my brother was a snake in my own garden. I spent the rest of the afternoon replaying every conversation I'd had with Jake over the past few months, mentally dissecting his every word, every smirk, every dismissive comment. Had this been his plan all along? Had he seen my kindness as weakness, my support as a stepping stone for his own twisted ambitions? That evening I waited for him to come back from whatever 2-hour client lunch he'd supposedly been on. When he finally strolled into the office, I was ready. Jake, my office now. He froze for a split second, his easy grin slipping as he registered the edge in my voice. He glanced around, realizing that the few employees still in the office had all gone quiet, their eyes nervously flicking between us. He followed me into my office, closing the door behind him. I stood by my desk, my fists clenched so tightly my knuckles were white. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Sit, I said, nodding to the chair opposite mine. He dropped into the chair, leaning back like this was just another casual chat between brothers. What's up, man? I tossed Lisa's phone onto the desk, the incriminating messages still open. He glanced down, his face twitching as he recognized his own words. Care to explain this? I asked, my voice dangerously low. He hesitated, his eyes darting to the door, as if he was calculating his chances of slipping out of this confrontation unscathed. But then, as if deciding that the best defense was a good offense, He leaned back, a smirk creeping onto his face. "Oh, come on, you're blowing this way out of proportion," he said, crossing his arms. "I was just testing the waters, feeling out our client relationships, trying to see if we have a loyalty problem." I felt a hot, pulsing anger flare up in my chest. "You call this loyalty testing? You've been sabotaging our relationships, planting seeds of doubt, trying to steer clients away. Are you out of your mind?" He rolled his eyes, the smirk still plastered on his face. "Relax. You're too uptight. This is just business. Sometimes you have to play a little dirty to see who's really on your side." I slammed my fist down on the desk, the sound echoing off the glass walls of my office. He flinched, the cocky mask slipping for just a moment. "Don't you dare talk to me about loyalty," I hissed, leaning in closer. "I gave you a job when no one else would. I pulled you out of a hole, trusted you with my business, my reputation, and this is how you repay me, by trying to tear it all down behind my back." For a brief moment I saw a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes, but then his face hardened and he leaned back, spreading his arms in a defiant gesture. "Fine. You want to act like a dictator, go ahead. But don't expect me to sit here and take orders forever. Maybe it's time I started thinking about my own future." I straightened, feeling a cold, calculated rage settle into my bones. For the first time, I truly saw my brother for what he was: a parasite, feeding off my success, manipulating my trust, and twisting every opportunity into a weapon against me. "Get out of my office," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed fury, "before I do something we'll both regret." He stood, tossing me one last cocky grin before swaggering out, letting the door swing shut behind him. I sank back into my chair, the silence of the empty office pressing down on me. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. It was time to stop being his safety net. It was time to teach my brother a lesson he'd never forget. I spent the next few days quietly preparing for what I knew had to come. I couldn't let this slide. I had to protect my business, my employees, and my reputation, not to mention my own sanity. The first step was gathering as much evidence as possible. I pulled up Jake's company email, scrolling through his sent messages. It didn't take long to find more red flags. He'd been using his work email to reach out to clients, subtly undermining my leadership and hinting at potential changes in the company's direction. Worse, I found a few emails that made my blood run cold. He'd been actively leaking project details, pricing strategies, and even confidential client proposals to a competitor, one of our biggest rivals in the industry. It felt like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just betrayal, this was outright sabotage. I printed everything out, building a thick file of every shady message, every underhanded move, every smug, self-satisfied email he'd ever sent. I even included the text messages Lisa had shown me. I wanted a complete picture of his betrayal, something undeniable, something he couldn't weasel his way out of. Next, I called a meeting with my lawyer. I explained the situation, laying out the evidence in front of him. He flipped through the pages, his frown deepening as he read. "This is bad," he said, tapping one particularly damning email. "If he's leaking confidential client information to a competitor, that's a serious breach of contract. You'd have every right to fire him for cause. Hell, you could even press charges if you wanted." I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. The idea of dragging my own brother through a legal battle made me sick, but what choice did I have if I didn't act? Now Jake would tear my company apart from the inside out. "Let's start with the termination papers," I said, my voice coming out colder than I expected. "I want this to be airtight. No loopholes, no room for him to come back at me later." My lawyer nodded, already scribbling notes. "Understood. I'll draft everything up and have it ready by the end of the week." As I walked out of his office, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew I was doing the right thing, but it didn't make it any easier. Firing my own brother felt like cutting off a piece of myself, but I couldn't let him drag me down with him. The final piece of my plan fell into place when I pulled my most trusted employees into a private meeting. I laid out the situation, showing them the evidence I'd gathered. They sat in stunned silence as I flipped through the pages, their faces going pale as they realized the full extent of Jake's betrayal. "I want you all to hear this from me first," I said, my voice firm. "Jake has been actively sabotaging our business, leaking confidential information and trying to poach our clients. I'm letting him go effective immediately. I just need your support as we weather the fallout." One by one, they nodded, a mix of anger and relief on their faces. "Thank you for trusting us," Lisa said, her voice thick with emotion. "We've got your back." Hearing those words felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control over my own company again. I spent the next 2 days tightening security, changing passwords, and locking Jake out of every system he had access to. I even called a few of our most critical clients, giving them a heads up that we were making some internal changes and reassuring them that their accounts were safe. Finally, the day came. I called Jake into my office one last time. He strolled in looking as cocky as ever, like he still believed he had the upper hand. "Take a seat," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He flopped down in the chair, tossing his jacket over the armrest like he owned the place. "What's up, bro? You look stressed." I slid the thick file across the desk, watching as his cocky grin faltered. He hesitated before picking it up, flipping through the pages. I saw his eyes widen, his hands starting to shake as he realized just how deep a hole he'd dug for himself. "This is all the evidence I've collected over the past few weeks," I said, my voice ice cold. Every email, every text, every whispered conversation. "You've been poisoning this company from the inside, leaking confidential information to our competitors and trying to steal my clients. You've crossed a line, Jake, a line I can't ignore." He looked up, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For once, he had nothing to say. "I'm terminating your employment, effective immediately." I continued, my hand steady on the desk. "Your company email has been deactivated, your access to our systems revoked, and security has been instructed to escort you out of the building if you try to come back. Consider this your official notice." He dropped the file onto the desk, his eyes narrowing as a flicker of anger replaced the shock. "You can't do this," he spat, leaning forward. "I'm your brother." I met his glare without flinching. "You stopped being my brother the moment you decided to sabotage everything I've worked for. Now get out of my office." He stood, his face twisted with rage, but he had no comeback this time. He snatched his jacket off the chair and stormed out, slamming the door behind him so hard the glass walls shook. I sank back into my chair, closing my eyes and letting out a long, shaky breath. It was over. I had cut the cancer out of my company, but the wound still throbbed. As I sat there listening to the distant sounds of my employees moving on with their day, I felt a strange, hollow sort of victory. I had done what needed to be done, but I couldn't help but wonder if I'd just lost more than a brother. Firing Jake should have been the end of it. I should have been able to breathe easier, focus on rebuilding the trust he had shattered and move on. But of course, Jake wasn't the type to go quietly. It started with a string of passive-aggressive texts dripping with resentment and self-pity. "Jake, so this is it? You just cut me off like I'm nothing." "Jake, you really think you can get away with this? I'm your brother, for God's sake." "Jake, I did more for that company than you'll ever know." I ignored them at first, figuring he just needed time to cool off. Maybe he'd come to his senses, realize how deeply he had screwed up and try to make amends. But then the messages took a darker turn. "Jake, I know things about your business, things that could ruin you. Don't make me do something we'll both regret." My pulse quickened as I read the last message, my mind racing through the possible damage he could still inflict. I had locked him out of every system, cut off his email, and revoked his access to all sensitive data, but he had been inside my company for months. God only knew what he had managed to steal or copy during that time. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text from Jake. It was a message from one of my oldest clients, a client who had stuck with me through thick and thin, who had become more of a friend than a business partner over the years. "Client, hey, can we talk? I got a strange message from your brother today." I felt my stomach drop. I called him, immediately bracing myself for whatever bomb Jake had just dropped. "Hey, man," my client said, his voice tense. "I don't know what's going on between you and your brother, but he just tried to pull me into some kind of scheme, said you were on the verge of bankruptcy and that I should jump ship before things got ugly." I closed my eyes, my hand tightening around the phone. What exactly did he say? He said you've been cooking the books running your company into the ground, and that it was just a matter of time before the whole thing collapsed. He even offered to help me find a more stable agency to handle my accounts. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Jake wasn't just trying to poach my clients, he was actively trying to destroy my reputation, to paint me as a desperate, failing businessman. "I'm so sorry you had to deal with that," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Listen, whatever he said, it's a lie. My company is as strong as ever, and I have the books to prove it." My client sighed, his tone softening. "I figured as much. I've known you too long to believe that kind of nonsense, but I thought you should know. It sounds like your brother's on a warpath." I thanked him for the heads up and ended the call, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to act fast, or Jake's smear campaign would cost me everything I had worked for. The next morning, I called my lawyer again, laying out the latest developments. He listened in silence, his fingers steepled under his chin as I paced his office, my words coming out in a frantic rush. "You need to shut this down now," he said, when I finally paused for breath. "You can't just fire him and hope he goes away. He's clearly willing to burn this entire business to the ground out of spite." I nodded, already formulating a plan in my head. I need to go on the offensive, make it clear that Jake has no part in this company anymore, and that anything he says should be taken as the bitter rantings of a disgruntled former employee. My lawyer's eyes narrowed, a hint of a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I've got just the thing. I'll draft a cease and desist order, making it clear that if he continues this campaign, we'll take legal action. I'll also prepare a public statement for you to send to your clients, reassuring them of the company's stability." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could still salvage this mess. I spent the next 48 hours drafting emails, calling clients, and personally reaching out to every major account Jake had tried to poison. I shared financial reports, client testimonials, and long-standing performance metrics, proving that my company was rock solid despite Jake's desperate lies. To my relief, most of them responded positively, expressing their support and loyalty. A few even shared screenshots of the messages Jake had sent, each one more desperate and unhinged than the last. Finally, I sent the cease and desist letter, making it clear that any further attempts to undermine my business would be met with swift legal action. I copied in my lawyer, the company's board, and a few of my most trusted employees, ensuring that Jake would have nowhere to hide if he tried to escalate this further. For a few days, everything went quiet. The text stopped. The frantic calls from clients slowed to a trickle. It seemed like Jake had finally gotten the message. But then one morning I walked into the office to find Lisa waiting for me, her face pale and eyes wide with panic. "You need to see this," she said, thrusting her phone into my hands. I looked down at the screen, my heart sinking as I saw Jake's face plastered across a viral social media post. He had gone live on one of his accounts, spewing a stream of lies and half-truths, accusing me of everything from tax fraud to employee mistreatment. The video had already racked up thousands of views, the comment section, a toxic stew of speculation and judgment. I felt the floor drop out from under me. This wasn't just a smear campaign anymore. This was a full-blown attack, and Jake had just taken it to a whole new level. Watching that video felt like a gut punch. Jake had crossed a line I hadn't even considered. He wasn't just trying to undermine me privately anymore, he was launching a public attack, dragging my name and my business through the mud for everyone to see. I forced myself to sit down, gripping the edge of my desk as I hit play. Jake's face filled the screen, his expression a twisted mix of smug satisfaction and barely contained rage. "Hey everyone," he began, leaning in close to the camera. "I know a lot of you have heard about my recent departure from my brother's company, and I just wanted to set the record straight. The truth is, he's been running his business like a dictator for years, exploiting his employees, cutting corners and cooking the books to make himself look good." My jaw clenched as I listened to him rattle off lie after lie, each one more outrageous than the last. He painted me as a tyrant, a corrupt businessman with a shady past, someone who had built his success on the backs of underpaid, overworked employees. He even went so far as to claim that I had personally sabotaged his career out of jealousy. As the video played on my phone started buzzing relentlessly, emails, text messages, social media, alerts, everyone from my employees to my closest clients was reaching out, panicked and confused. I hit pause, my hands trembling. I needed to act and fast. I couldn't let Jake's lies gain traction or my entire business could crumble. I called my lawyer first, explaining the situation in a breathless rush. He let out a long, exasperated sigh when I finished. "All right," he said, his tone grim. "We need to go nuclear. This is defamation, plain and simple. If he's making false claims about your business practices, we can hit him with a cease and desist, demand a retraction, and even sue for damages if this starts costing you clients." I nodded, already pulling up my contacts list. "I'm on it. Draft the paperwork. I'm going to start damage control." Next, I called my PR team, walking them through the situation and instructing them to draft a public statement. I needed to get ahead of this, to put my side of the story out there before Jake's lies spread any further. Within hours, we had a carefully crafted response ready to go. I posted it to all of our company's social media accounts, emailed it to every client on our roster, and even had it sent out as a press release to the major industry publications. Statement recently, a former employee has made a series of false and defamatory claims regarding our business practices. We take these allegations seriously and are pursuing all available legal remedies to protect our reputation and the integrity of our company. We remain fully committed to transparency, ethical business practices, and the trust of our valued clients. But I didn't stop there. I knew that if I wanted to truly bury Jake's lies, I needed more than just a strongly worded statement. I needed proof, undeniable, irrefutable evidence that he was the one in the wrong. I spent the next 2 days combing through every piece of documentation I had, pulling financial records, client contracts, employee testimonials, and even old text messages that painted a very different picture from the one Jake was trying to sell. Then I compiled it all into a massive dossier, screenshots, emails, financial reports, client letters of support. I even included the evidence I had gathered before firing Jake the emails, where he had tried to poach my clients and leak sensitive data to our competitors. Finally, I uploaded the entire thing to a secure public server, linking it in a follow-up statement. Follow-up statement. For those seeking the truth, we have compiled a comprehensive set of documents that clearly refute the baseless allegations being spread online. Our reputation is built on years of hard work, transparency, and ethical business practices, and we will not allow falsehoods to tarnish our legacy. The response was immediate. Within hours, the comments under Jake's video started to shift. People were linking to my dossier, picking apart his claims, pointing out the holes in his story. Clients reached out to express their continued support, and a few even posted public statements of their own, praising my company's integrity. By the end of the week, Jake's video had been taken down, likely at the urging of his own lawyer. I had made it clear that I wouldn't just sit back and take his attacks, but even as the storm began to pass, I couldn't shake the hollow feeling in my chest. I had won the battle, but at what cost? I sat alone in my office late one night, staring out the window at the city skyline, the lights twinkling in the distance. I had saved my company, protected my employees, and reclaimed my reputation, but I had also severed one of the last real family connections I had left. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made over the years, the long hours, the missed family gatherings, the friendships that had faded away as I poured my heart and soul into this business. I had built an empire, but in the end it felt like I had lost something far more important. As I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence of the empty office wash over me, I realized that this wasn't just the end of a business partnership, it was the end of a brotherhood. I had fought to protect everything I had built, but the victory felt hollow like the ashes of a bridge I had been forced to burn. With a heavy heart, I powered down my computer, grabbed my coat and walked out of the office, leaving the darkness behind me. End of story. Thanks for listening. Story 2. Sell your car, Ethan. Your brother's loan won't pay itself, Dad said, eyes glued to his tablet. I paused mid-step, orange juice bottle in hand. Excuse me. He looked up, unfazed. Lucas is trying to get his business off the ground. He needs support. And I shot back. Mom chimed in from the stove. You're doing well, Ethan. Lucas just needs a little help. Help you just raised my rent by 80%, I reminded them. Dad waved it off. You're still paying less than market rate. I leaned against the counter, trying to process. So let me get this straight. Lucas, who's 30 lives rent-free in the basement, hasn't held a steady job in years? And now I'm supposed to sell my car to cover his debts? Silence. You've always been good with money, Dad said. Because I work, because I save, because I sacrifice. While Lucas sleeps till noon and tweets about hustle culture. You said I could stay here for a year to save up, I continued. I've done that. Now you're jacking up the rent and asking me to bail out Lucas. He's your brother, Mom said, as if that explained everything. I laughed bitterly. I'll think about it, I said, retreating to my room. They had no idea what I was planning, no idea that Lucas's big day would come with a surprise they weren't expecting. But to understand that you need to know how we got here. When I moved back home after college, it was supposed to be temporary, just a year to get on my feet. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I've paid rent, split groceries, covered repairs, and helped Mum with unexpected bills. I never complained. I thought that's what responsible sons do. But the double standard was glaring. Lucas, my younger brother, was finding himself. That meant expensive hobbies and failed ventures, always needing funding. 2019, Lucas wanted to start a dropshipping business. I paid for the LLC and website. 2020, he pivoted to YouTube. I bought him a camera and mic. 2021, crypto phase. He took out a $15,000 loan and lost it all in 2 months. Now I'm supposed to sell my car to cover his loan payments. I said no. They acted like I was the villain. Lucas isn't like you, Mom said one night. He's sensitive. You have a job, a career. He has dreams. Is he allergic to working? I snapped. Don't be cruel, Dad interjected. He's trying, but the stress of the loan is making him anxious. So sell the PlayStation, I retorted. Maybe anxiety will go away when he starts budgeting. Dad stood up. Enough with the sarcasm. You raise my rent by 80%, but he pays nothing, I pointed out. He's family, Mom said. So am I replied. No one answered. It got worse. Lucas started using the family card for Uber Eats, opening my packages. His girlfriend practically moved in. Then came the final straw. I was trying to nap before an overnight shift when Lucas barged in. Hey, your credit's good, right? Why, I need to refinance my loan. Can I use your name? It'll help with the rate. You want me to co-sign your loan? Just temporarily. You've got nothing to lose. I stood up, walked past him and didn't say a word. You Matt, he called after me? I didn't answer. That night something shifted in me. I didn't feel tired. I felt done. I started researching. Because if there's one thing I learned in IT, it's that the best way to destroy a system is from the inside. And the system here was my family. My mistake was thinking I was a part of it, but I wasn't. I was the power source. And it was time to pull the plug. Lucas's big day was supposed to be a launch party for his new brand. He printed T-shirts with some vague slogan, made a media kit, and invited everyone to our backyard. The night before, Dad asked if I could help set up the speakers. No, I said. You're not even going to come, Mom asked. He's your brother. He's your project, I replied. You go clap. The morning of the event, I printed out the papers, sealed the envelope, double-checked everything. 30 days. That's what the law gives you on a formal eviction notice in our state. Lucas was already out back by noon, strutting around in sunglasses, barking orders. I waited until the guests arrived, until Lucas stood in front of everyone with a mic talking about how grit beats privilege and how this journey was only possible thanks to his support system. I stepped outside just as the applause started, envelope in hand. I walked right up to him and handed it over. What's this? He asked, smirking. Your surprise, I said. You've got 30 days. 30 days to what? To move out, I said loud and clear. The music stopped. You're joking, Lucas said, flipping open the envelope. No, I said. That's a formal notice. This is my property. You're not a tenant. You're a liability. And I'm done. What is this, Ethan? Dad barked. You can't just... I cut in. And I did. You raised my rent by 80%, told me to sell my car to pay for his debt, called it fair. This isn't the time or place, Mom said through gritted teeth. It's the perfect time, I said, because I want all of you to hear it. I turned to the crowd. For 3 years I paid rent bills, fixed the house, when no one else lifted a finger. I bought groceries while Lucas bought microphones. I watched him fail at every idea. And still you made me the backup plan, the safety net, the punching bag. Ethan, you're overreacting, Dad tried again. Am I? I turned to Lucas. Did you or did you not ask me last week to co-sign a loan for a business you haven't even launched? Lucas was red. It was just an idea. Exactly, I snapped. You live on ideas. I live on actual work. I'm your brother, he shouted. You're supposed to help me. I did, I said coldly. I helped you become someone who's never had to be accountable. But I'm done. Mom gasped. You can't talk to him like that. You mean the way you talked to me when you called me selfish for not selling my car, the way you've treated me like a wallet with legs. Dad stepped forward. You're embarrassing this family. I laughed. This family is an embarrassment, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Lucas's voice cracked as he opened the letter again. You can't evict me. You don't even own this place. I do, I said, pulling out my phone and opening the mortgage app. I showed the screen to Dad. Bought it 6 months ago in my name only. You've been living here on my dime. Silence. You didn't tell us, Mom whispered. You didn't ask, I said. You just kept assuming I'd carry you. I turned around, ready to walk back into the house. Oh, and by the way, I added, looking over my shoulder, don't worry about rent. I'm waiving it for the next 30 days. After that, any of you still here, I'll let the sheriff do the talking. And with that, I went inside, closed the door behind me, and finally breathed. After the backyard explosion, the house went dead quiet. No one said anything for the rest of the day. Mom disappeared into her room with a bottle of wine. Dad stayed at the kitchen table, unmoving. Lucas slammed his door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I cranked up my music, locked my door, and took the deepest nap of my adult life. For the first time in years, I didn't feel drained. I felt dangerous. The silence didn't last long. Day 4, post-notice, I caught Dad rifling through a stack of my mail on the dining table. Bank statements, mortgage papers, legal forms. He didn't even flinch. We just want to understand our options, he said. You can't seriously mean to evict your own family. I raised an eyebrow. Your family were the ones who raised my rent, told me to sell my car, and expected me to subsidize Lucas's startup dreams like I'm Silicon Valley in sneakers. It's not like that, he muttered. This house was always ours, spiritually. I let out a dry laugh. You're spiritual landlords now. He didn't answer. Instead, Mum appeared with a folded piece of paper. She placed it gently on the table like it was a peace offering. It was a list. Groceries, utilities, expenses, all things I'd paid for in silence for years. This is what we owe you, she said. We'd like to make it right, but you have to talk to Lucas. My face hardened. Oh, I will, but not with words. That night, I got a knock at the door. To my surprise, it wasn't more family nonsense. It was Alyssa Lucas's ex. She looked different, calmer. I heard what happened, she said, holding a file folder. He told me you offered to co-sign his loan, she continued. That's a lie. I was the original co-signer, but 2 months ago he updated the paperwork. I took the file from her hands and froze. Lucas had forged my name, my email, my phone number. He used my credit without asking, without warning. My jaw locked. So he lied to me and to the bank. She nodded. You need to know what kind of mess he's in. He's been lying to everyone, including himself. I called my lawyer, we reviewed the documents, every signature, every fake email trail. You have grounds to press charges, he told me. Forgery, identity misuse, possibly fraud. I stared at the screen. My brother hadn't just used me, he impersonated me. And the worst part, no one stopped him. Not my parents, not even himself. The next day I called a family meeting, one last supper. They came reluctantly. Dad looked tense. Mum clutched a tissue. Lucas sulked, eyes darting, avoiding mine. I dropped the folder on the table. Let's skip the salad, I said. Lucas, you used my name to secure your loan. The morning after the eviction notice, the kitchen felt colder. Not because the thermostat was off, but because I was done pretending. No one said anything at breakfast. Dad sipped his coffee in silence. Mum rearranged the silverware 3 times. Lucas didn't even come out of the basement. By 9 a.m, the family group chat was already heating up. Mum, can we talk about this privately? Dad, you've made your point. Now undo it. Lucas, you're an actual psycho. Congrats. I didn't respond. I went about my day like normal, work calls, 2 client meetings, groceries, and I bought a new deadbolt for my room. That evening, Lucas tried to pretend nothing had changed. He strutted into the kitchen shirtless with a smoothie like he was a fitness coach instead of an unemployed dreamer who once Googled how to drop ship dog collars and called it a career plan. You know, legally you can't evict me without 60 days' notice, he said casually. I didn't look up from my laptop. Not true? You're not a tenant? No lease, no contract, no rights? It's a 30-day notice because I own the house. He blinked, still petty though. No, I said, it's peace. He scoffed and walked out. But peace was short-lived. The next day Mum knocked on my door with an old photo album. I knew the tactic. Guilt in a scrapbook. You remember this, she said, opening to a picture of us at the beach ages ago. You were always the strong one. You took care of Lucas when we couldn't. I was 9, I replied. You knew how to calm him down. You were always mature. You mean I handled your responsibilities? Her eyes flashed. That's not fair. Neither is raising my rent to cover someone else's loan. She closed the book gently. I know you're angry, but this will break the family. It's already broken. I just stopped pretending the cracks were decorative. She left the room without another word. By day 10, things escalated. Lucas started leaving passive-aggressive post-its on everything I bought. On my almond milk must be nice. On my protein bars, Bella. Even the Wi-Fi name mysteriously changed to Ethan Bank. I didn't engage. I just printed every petty note and added it to a file I now called The Chronicles of a Leech. Then came the identity theft bombshell. It arrived not with a bang but an envelope. A letter from my bank confirming a recent application for a credit increase on a card I never requested. Attached a copy of the application. Name Ethan Ford. Phone mine. Email almost mine, just 1 letter off. Signature forged, sloppy, but passable to a computer. My stomach turned. I confronted him that night. You applied for a card in my name. He was playing Xbox, didn't even pause the game. It's not a big deal. I used a different email. It's not like they'll approve it. You committed fraud. It's just a soft inquiry. You forged my signature. He set the controller down finally. Ethan, I just needed some quick capital to get the brand going. I'm going to pay it all back. I stood there trying to process the absolute lack of shame. No, I said, you're going to pack. Day 15. Lucas moved his things out. Or rather, he dumped them into Mum's SUV and told her he'd circle back when he had a proper storage unit, which meant she'd be stuck with his junk for months. I didn't care. Dad tried one last time. We were in the garage, both reaching for the broom. You really want to be the guy who kicked his brother out during a mental health crisis, he said. I paused. Lucas isn't having a crisis. He's just allergic to accountability. Dad lowered his voice. He looked up to you, you know. No, he looked at me like a walking wallet. There's a difference. I walked away, but that line stuck with me. He looked up to you. Maybe once. Maybe when we were kids and I built Lego castles while he knocked them over just to watch me rebuild. But not anymore. The final straw was a voicemail. Lucas drunk, slurring. "You're not better than me. You think just 'cause you got a little money you're a hero. You're nothing without us. You'll die alone." He hung up with a scream. I didn't block the number. I saved the voicemail. Because that was the moment I knew I'd made the right call. 2 days before the 30-day deadline, I received an email from a company I'd applied to 6 months ago and forgotten about. Position available, lead IT analyst, Seattle, housing stipend, flexible remote policy. The interview was in 2 days. I booked a flight that night. The second I landed in Seattle, it felt different, lighter. The air didn't hum with guilt. The sidewalks didn't carry my brother's shadow. I could walk into a cafe without wondering if my phone would buzz with another Venmo request labelled Emergency Smoothie Fund. I nailed the interview. By the time I flew back home, they had already emailed me the offer. I accepted. I didn't announce it, I just started packing. 3 suitcases, 1 duffel and a carry-on. Mom noticed first. "Vacation?" she asked. "Relocation," I replied. She looked confused. "Seattle, new job, new place. I leave in 6 days." She blinked. "And you weren't going to tell us." "You raised my rent by 80%. That was your goodbye." On move-out day, I left 3 envelopes on the kitchen counter, a detailed breakdown of every expense I'd covered in the past 3 years, a list of household contacts from the plumber to the Wi-Fi company, a note that said simply, "Now it's your turn." Lucas never showed up. He texted me the day after I left. "Lucas, guess you think you won." I didn't reply. But if I had, I would have said no. I just stopped losing. Seattle was rainy the week I moved, but it didn't feel gloomy. It felt clean, like everything was being reset. No tension hanging in the hallway. No voices echoing guilt through the walls. Just the sound of raindrops and the hum of a new beginning. My apartment was small, studio, hardwood floors, view of a fire escape and someone else's laundry line, but it was mine, all mine, every fork in the drawer, every bill in my name, every quiet minute mine to fill or not. I started my new job the following Monday. The team was decent, a few younger analysts, a manager who liked sarcastic memes, and a break room with actually good coffee. Nothing flashy, but no one called me ungrateful for not sharing my lunch. I told no one from home where I moved, blocked my parents, muted Lucas, left the family group chat without a word. Silence. For a while. Then came the voicemail. Mom's voice, not angry, worse calm. "Ethan, you've made your choice, and I suppose we have to respect that. Just remember, family doesn't forget. When the shine wears off, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms." I saved that message next to Lucas's drunken rant, a little folder on my phone labelled Reminders. It was day 19 in Seattle when I got an unexpected email. Subject urgent from Dad. I almost deleted it. Curiosity 1. "Your brother is in trouble. Real trouble. I know you don't want to hear from us, but he's being sued. The loan you refused to help with, he defaulted. The creditor is taking legal action. He listed you as a guarantor. Please call." I froze. Guarantor. I never signed anything, never agreed, I never even saw the paperwork. Unless... My chest tightened. I reached for my backpack, yanked out the file I'd brought from home, the one Alyssa had given me. I flipped through the forged documents. There it was. My name, my fake signature, a fraudulent agreement. He hadn't just used my credit to apply, he used my identity to secure the loan legally. He'd listed me as a backup payer. And now they were trying to stick me with the bill. That night I didn't sleep. Instead I sent a message to my lawyer in Seattle. The same woman who helped me review the documents when I first learned Lucas had forged my name. She answered the next morning with one sentence. "We're filing for legal protection today." By the end of that week, things had escalated fast. My lawyer sent cease and desist letters to the creditor and to Lucas. She filed an affidavit stating that I had not agreed to co-sign and that my identity had been used without consent. The loan company responded by freezing all proceedings until further investigation. Then I made one more move. I called the police back home and reported the forgery officially. They opened a case. 2 days later, Mum called from a different number. I let it ring. She tried again and again. On the 3rd try, I answered. Not out of kindness, out of clarity. "Hello." Her voice cracked like she hadn't expected me to pick up. "Ethan," she breathed, "you don't have to do this." "You mean report a crime?" "Lucas is your brother, and I'm his victim. You can't ruin his future over a mistake. Is that what you called it when he tried to stick me with $40,000 in debt?" Silence. Then, "Please, he's spiraling. He's staying in some motel. He's scared." I let that sit for a moment. "Good. Maybe fear will teach him what comfort never did." I ended the call before she could twist the knife. A week passed. I got a letter in the mail from Lucas himself, handwritten, no return address. "Ethan, I messed up. I know that now. But if you go through with this, I'll lose everything. Please, I'm begging you. I didn't think you'd find out. I thought I'd have time to fix it. I thought you'd understand. You always used to fix things for me. Don't stop now. Please." No apology, no ownership, just panic. I didn't write back. Instead, I forwarded the letter to my lawyer. It was around this time I began hearing from extended family. Aunt Marlene emailed me. "Your mother is distraught. Lucas is family. Can't you find it in your heart to be merciful?" Uncle Rob chimed in on Facebook, publicly. "Real men don't kick their brothers when they're down." I replied once. "Real men don't forge signatures and dump responsibility on others." I blocked them all. They didn't know what I'd been through. They didn't know about the bills, the guilt, the sleepless years, the empty fridge while I paid for Lucas's launches. They just saw a headline, "Brother reports brother," and thought they had the whole story. They didn't, and I didn't owe them one. 2 months after I left, I got a package. No note, just a check. $1,500. From Mum and Dad's joint account. I stared at it. Blood money, a peace offering. I didn't know. I shredded it. Because no amount of money erases betrayal. Especially when they thought $1,500 could settle years of silence manipulation and stolen identity. Seattle kept healing me. Not dramatically, quietly. Like the way your shoulders stop aching when you stop clenching them out of habit. I joined a rock climbing gym. Learned how to cook more than microwave pasta. Started sleeping better. Bought furniture I actually liked instead of inheriting cast-offs with dents and guilt. And slowly I stopped waiting for the next disaster. Because there wouldn't be one. Not here. Still on the 90th day, after my move, the final day, the legal window remained open. I got one last call. From a lawyer representing Lucas. He wanted to settle. "We're prepared to remove your name from the loan entirely if you agree not to pursue criminal charges." I smiled. Victory wasn't revenge. It was leverage. "Done," I said. "Send me the paperwork." When the email arrived, it came with a final message. "We apologize for the inconvenience this has caused. Mr. Ford acknowledges the misunderstanding and has removed your information from all records." Misunderstanding. That word again. Funny how forgery and fraud always get softened when it's a family member. But I didn't care. Because I wasn't doing this to punish Lucas. I was doing it to protect myself. And that finally felt like enough. 3 months after I left home, I didn't recognize my own life. And for the first time, that wasn't a bad thing. I'd wake up without panic, without dread, without the weight of wondering what I'd be asked to give up today. My apartment smelled like fresh coffee and pine-scented candles instead of reheated guilt and stale tension. There were still moments, though quiet ones, where the past tried to whisper its way back in. A voicemail from Mom, a blocked number trying to sneak through, a mutual acquaintance who'd just wanted to check in. But I didn't answer any of them. Because here's what no one tells you about finally choosing yourself the people who drained, you will call it betrayal. They'll act like you owe them an explanation for drawing a boundary. But you don't. You owe them silence. And that's exactly what I gave them. Alyssa checked in again around the holidays. Just a short message. "Hope Seattle's treating you right. Just so you know, Lucas tried the same thing on a mutual friend. Didn't get far. Word's out. You didn't just protect yourself. You warned the rest of us. That hit me harder than I expected. Not because I wanted credit, but because for years I thought protecting myself was selfish. That saying no was cruel. that if I didn't keep giving, I'd lose the people I loved. Turns out the people I loved didn't actually love me, they loved what I gave them. And when that ran out, so did they. It was early January when I got the letter from my parents. Handwritten, pages long, too neat to be spontaneous, too careful to be heartfelt. We've been reflecting. We didn't realise how much pressure we put on you. You've always been the strong one. We're sorry if it ever felt like we took advantage. I folded the letter halfway through. Not because it wasn't what I'd wanted for years, but because it arrived 3 months too late. I didn't need a confession drafted like a court statement. I needed the truth when I was drowning, not when I'd already learned to swim. Lucas never reached out again. His Instagram rebrand failed. Coach Lucas became Lucas Digital, which became LD Fitness, which quietly vanished in March. His last post, a gym selfie with the caption, "Sometimes the ones closest to you hurt you the most, but real ones bounce back." I didn't comment, didn't screenshot it, didn't share it with friends. I just stared at it for a minute, and then I blocked him again. It was freeing in the smallest and most unexpected way. Like finally realizing you don't owe someone your loyalty just because you share a last name. The Seattle job kept getting better. I got promoted, not because I begged or bent over backwards or covered someone else's responsibilities, but because I did the work quietly, consistently, for myself. My manager once said, "You're one of the most stable people on this team." I almost laughed, because back home stable meant useful, meant always available, meant you can handle it, so take on more. Here stable meant respected, valued, safe. Around April I got a text from my aunt, the one who always played Switzerland in Family Feuds. "Your parents are selling the house." They didn't tell me why, I assume you already know. I hadn't, but I wasn't surprised. Once you remove the silent workhorse, the whole structure falls apart. Turns out they couldn't afford the mortgage without my rent and Liam's imaginary success. I wondered if Mum still made casseroles like currency, if Dad still sat at the table pretending not to notice the silence. I didn't ask, because I didn't care. A few weeks later I walked by a bookstore window and stopped. There was a sign in the display, "What you allow is what will continue." Simple, obvious, but it punched the breath out of me. That was my life in one sentence. I'd allowed too much for too long, and it continued until I made it stop. That night, I went home, pulled the eviction notice from my drawer and tucked it into a notebook where I'd started drafting something else. Not revenge, not letters I'd never send, just a book. A short one. A collection of moments where people said I was cruel and selfish, and how those moments became my freedom. You'd think I missed them, that I'd look back and wonder if I overreacted. But here's the truth, I missed the version of myself that didn't know better. The one who still hoped they'd change, who still believed love would show up if I just gave enough. But I don't miss them. I miss what I thought they were. And that's not the same thing. This summer I took a week off. No reason, just because I could. I drove up the coast, stayed at a small inn by the ocean, no Wi-Fi, just books and quiet. The innkeeper asked if I was there for healing. I said no, I already did that, this is for living. And that's what I've been doing. Living, not surviving, not carrying, not sacrificing by default. Just living. And if anyone from back home ever calls again, I'll let it ring. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm finally full, and they only knew me hungry. Story 3. I never expected betrayal to come in the form of a bank notification. It was a Monday morning after the yearly family cookout. I'd hosted it, paid for everything, catered ribs, a backyard tent, even custom t-shirts, with our family name printed across the back in cheesy cursive. I stood in line for coffee, opened my banking app, and saw it a balance of $72.63. I blinked. Yesterday it was over 13,000. I thought it was a glitch. I refreshed again. Still the same. That's when my stomach twisted. I stepped outside the cafe and called my bank. A polite voice confirmed the transaction's 5 transfers, all within 24 hours, all to an account registered under Brian Holden, my sister's husband. I didn't panic, not right away. I called my sister Talia first. "Oh, hey Jace," she said, like it was a casual Tuesday. "Isn't the weather perfect?" I skipped the small talk. "Did Brian transfer money from my account?" There was a pause. Look, we didn't think you'd notice. What I said, deadpan. We were behind on the mortgage. Bree's hours got cut again. And, well, you're single, no kids, you're always helping, right? My hand clenched around the phone. So you took it. I mean, she let out a nervous laugh. You weren't using it. I hung up. 5 minutes later, I got a text from Brian. We needed it more than you. Don't be petty. Petty, right. This wasn't the first time they'd leaned on me, but it was the first time they didn't ask. Just took. Like my money was some kind of communal pot. I had never felt so exposed. That night, I drove over to my parents' house. My mum opened the door, her face lit up like she wasn't holding secrets. Sweetheart, she said, come in, we've got leftover cake. No thanks, I said, stepping inside. We need to talk. My dad was in his recliner flipping channels. My younger cousin was on the floor with a controller in hand. Talia and Brian were at the kitchen counter laughing over wine. I walked in like a ghost at my own funeral. No one flinched. I know what you did, I said, looking directly at Brian. His eyes didn't waver. He took a sip from his glass and said, Relax, man. You act like we robbed a bank. We just took what we needed. You did rob a bank, I replied cold. Mine. My mum raised her hands. Let's not start drama. My voice stayed calm. How long have you all been doing this? Talia tilted her head. Doing what? Treating me like a wallet. Taking lying excusing. Pretending I'm part of the family until it's time to split the bill. Mum sighed. Jace, you've always had it easier. No kids, stable job. It's not fair to act like we're criminals. I laughed once. You are criminals. Dad looked up from the TV. You don't need that money anyway. Brian added, and we'll pay it back. Eventually. I looked at each of them. No apologies, no shame. Just entitlement like I was being irrational for wanting basic respect. I pulled my phone out and opened an app, the one tied to the truck I bought for Dad 2 years ago when his credit was too low to get a loan. 3 taps, list for sale, confirm. Then I turned to Dad. You'll be getting a call tomorrow. Don't be surprised when the truck gets towed. Brian chuckled. You're serious? I walked to the door, dead serious, and that's only the beginning. Their laughter stopped. Outside, I stood in the driveway and let the cold air settle into my chest. I wasn't just angry, I was done. The next morning, the messages began. From Talia, what the hell did you do? The bank account's frozen. From Brian, are you really selling your dad's truck over a couple transfers? From Mom, you're being cruel. We're your family. I didn't reply. Later that afternoon, a tow truck rolled into their driveway. My dad called 5 times. I picked up on the 6th. You embarrassed me, he barked. In front of the neighbours. I didn't flinch. You emptied my account. I thought you were more mature than this. You thought wrong. You'll regret this, he said. I ended the call. That night I booked a consultation with a lawyer. I also began combing through years of transactions. Payments for school supplies I never saw. Grocery money that went toward birthday trips I wasn't invited to. A second car payment I didn't know I was covering. I made a spreadsheet, colour-coded, dates, totals, notes. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. And the truth was simple, they didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource. But they were about to learn what happens when the resource cuts off the supply. By Thursday, I'd blocked everyone. I wasn't just unplugging, I was severing ties. Completely. No more group chats, filled with fake love yous after they drained my bank account. No more being the fallback plan when someone lost their job or forgot their rent was due or didn't feel like paying their phone bill. No more using my name, my silence, my guilt. They weren't family, not in any way that counted. The only person I didn't block was Aunt Lee. She'd always been the quiet one, never asked for anything, never said much. But that night I got a voice memo from her. I saw what happened at the cookout, Jace. I'm not taking sides. But I will say this, sometimes family is just a word. Look out for yourself. No one else will. It hit me harder than I expected. She knew. She always had. And she was still watching. That weekend, I drove 3 hours to the bank to freeze my accounts, issue fraud reports, and close every access point they ever had. I even cancelled an old Venmo account, the one Talia still had connected to mine, just in case, which somehow had quietly bled me for $300 last Christmas. They called it help. I called it theft. Monday, I filed my first official report, unauthorised access and withdrawal. My lawyer helped me prepare the documents. It was dry, emotionless. Facts, numbers, signatures, screen grabs. I expected silence, maybe some half-hearted apology from Mom. Instead, they retaliated. First came a Facebook post from Talia, a paragraph painted in passive aggression. She didn't name me, but it wasn't subtle. Sometimes the people you help the most turn around and betray you. Just because someone gives you money doesn't make them family. Blood is more than bank transfers. The comments poured in. Sending hugs, sis. You deserve better, T. Cut the toxic people out. I stared at it in disbelief. She had weaponized my generosity. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because 2 days later Brian's boss called me. I'd been listed as a character reference 2 years ago when he applied for a managerial role. We'd talked briefly. I hadn't heard from him since. I hate to ask, the man said, but we're investigating some financial inconsistencies. Your name came up in our internal review. Apparently, Brian had used my info, including a loan approval I'd co-signed for, to get a car lease through his employer's benefits system. A car I didn't even know existed. A car that now had my name tied to it again. That was it. That was the final straw. I filed a formal complaint with the credit bureau, sent over the evidence, told Brian's employer exactly what had happened. By Friday, Brian was suspended pending investigation. That night Mom called again. I didn't answer, but the voicemail said everything. I raised you better than this. You're turning against your own family, Jace. You're burning everything down. Do you think Grandma would be proud of what you're doing? It was funny she mentioned Grandma, because the next day a letter arrived. Handwritten. Sloppy but familiar. Jace, it's your Uncle Mark. I don't want to get in the middle of this, but you need to understand your sister's going through a rough time. She didn't mean to hurt you. You've always been the strong one. Can't you just be the bigger person and let this go? I laughed, out loud, alone. Let it go. I let it go when Talia used my card accidentally for concert tickets. I let it go when Mom asked for money for the electricity bill and bought new kitchen appliances. I let it go when Brian asked for a short-term loan that turned into 2 years of silence. I was done letting go. I was holding on to myself. And then came the call I wasn't expecting. Ryan, Talia's ex, the guy she'd dated before Brian. He was never a huge part of our lives, but he knew the family well. We hadn't spoken in years. Hey, he said, I heard what's going on. My sister saw that Facebook post and she sent it to me. Thought you'd want to know. She's trying to get ahead of something. What do you mean? I asked. He hesitated. Talia's applying for a hardship grant in your name. I nearly dropped the phone. She's claiming you gave her power of attorney, Ryan added. Said you're abroad and unreachable. My sister works for the grant committee. That's how she caught it. I froze. Do you have proof she didn't? He asked. I laughed bitterly. I have proof she never had it. It had escalated from guilt to theft to full-blown fraud. And I knew what I had to do. By Monday morning, I was sitting across from a detective at the local fraud investigation unit. I handed over the full folder screenshots, bank records, emails, texts, statements, even the copy of Talia's fake POA form with my forged signature. She was that bold. The detective didn't say much at first. Then she looked up and said, "You've got a solid case. If you press forward, this isn't going to stay in civil court." "I know," I said. She nodded. "It's rare that people go after family like this." I shrugged. It's rare that family leaves you no choice. Back home, I sat in my apartment, the air heavy with what was coming. For years, I gave everything. Now I was finally taking something back. Not money, my dignity. And this time, I wasn't letting anyone steal it. The case moved faster than I expected. 3 days after I sat down with the fraud investigator, I got a call from her. "We've reviewed everything. The evidence is strong," she said. "We'll be filing charges this week. Expect some pushback." Pushback came quicker than the paperwork. First Mom showed up. Unannounced, of course. I opened the door and found her standing there in a long coat holding a Tupperware dish like she thought nostalgia might save her. She gave me a practiced smile. "I made the chicken casserole you used to love." I didn't move. I didn't say a word. "Can we talk, sweetheart?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "We can talk here." She clutched the dish tighter. "This isn't who you are, Jace." I nodded. "You're right. Who I am doesn't let people steal from me anymore." She blinked hard. We didn't steal, we borrowed. It's family. Stop calling it that, I said. You don't get to slap the word family on betrayal and expect me to swallow it. I'm your mother, she whispered, voice trembling now. Doesn't that mean something? Not if you helped them empty my account. Her mouth fell open. The tears started, but I'd seen them before, too many times. I cooked for you. I drove you to school. I helped you. I raised a hand, and I paid your rent, covered your hospital bill when you didn't have insurance, bought groceries for your house for years. You want to tally up who gave more? Let's do it. She looked away, jaw tightening. I took a breath. Tell Talia the paperwork's coming. She'll get it soon. Mom shook her head slowly. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone. I smiled. No, I won't. Because for the first time I'll be alone by choice. She left the dish on the step. I didn't take it inside. That weekend the case made local news. Fraud charges filed against woman for stealing $14,000 from brother's account. They didn't use our last names, but the photo of Talia being escorted out of her house was clear enough for anyone from town to recognize her. I didn't post, didn't comment, but word got around. My cousin Danny sent me a message. Bro, she really thought she'd get away with it, everyone's talking. Then another. She's telling people you hacked your own account for sympathy. Classic. Then the spin cycle really kicked in. Talia started posting cryptic stories, sharing Bible verses, and quotes about betrayal and the people closest to you hurting you the most. She even posted a throwback photo of us as kids, caption, "Some bonds break because they were fake all along." Her followers poured in with hearts and prayers and comments like, "Don't worry, sis, you're a warrior. You'll rise stronger. Your brother's clearly jealous." Jealous? Of what? The debt, the lies, the delusion. But I didn't say a word. Because she could post all the inspirational quotes she wanted, the courts didn't scroll Instagram. Ryan reached out again. He'd kept his distance since the grant scam was exposed. But now he sent me a copy of something new, a GoFundMe, created by Talia, titled A Second Chance After Family Betrayal. The description said she was being unjustly accused of financial crimes by a relative who abandoned their family for pride. I read the whole thing twice. Then I emailed my lawyer. We had the campaign shut down the next day for misrepresentation and potential fraud. That same night I got a string of anonymous calls and one voicemail. You're destroying everything. Was it really worth it? You're not punishing Talia. You're humiliating us all. I saved the message. A week later the court date was set. The charges: fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized use of financial assets. I didn't want to be there, but I went. Not for them, for me. Talia showed up in a cream sweater, no makeup, playing the humble victim. Her lawyer looked exhausted already. Mom and Dad sat in the second row. They didn't look at me. When the judge asked if I had anything to submit, I handed over the final stack of documentation, including a signed note Talia had written to Ryan bragging about using my info to cover what Jace won't even miss. Her lawyer barely tried to fight it. The courtroom was silent as the judge flipped through each page. Then she looked at Talia. I've seen less evidence in corporate fraud cases, she said. You didn't just break the law, you broke trust. That matters here. The verdict? Guilty. Restitution ordered, charges filed, sentence pending. She didn't cry. She just sat there, stunned. For once, there was no one left to twist the story. I left before anyone could stop me. That night, I drove to the diner where I used to go after college shifts. Sat in a booth, ordered fries and a coffee. Just me. No one asked for anything. No one looked at me like I owed them the world. It was quiet. I took a picture of the receipt and posted it. Caption: first meal in a long time I paid for that didn't come with strings attached. I didn't expect much, but it went viral. Within hours, people started sharing their stories about family using them, betraying them, taking their kindness for granted. The comments were full of love, support, stories that sounded too much like mine. That's when I knew I wasn't the only one. 2 weeks later, I got a letter, no return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Grandma Ruth. Dear Jace, I've been watching quietly. I didn't know all the details, only pieces. But what I saw I didn't like. I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. I left something for you in my will. Your mother doesn't know. She doesn't need to. But I want you to have it because you've earned it not just through pain, but through strength. Keep going. The truth always rises even if people try to bury it. Love, Grandma. I wiped a tear and smiled. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone saw me. Really saw me. Not as a wallet, not as a fallback plan, but as me. I didn't tell anyone about Grandma's letter. Not Talia, not my parents, not even Ryan. Some things deserve to stay sacred. 2 weeks after the trial, I got another letter, this one from her attorney. Grandma Ruth had left me the lake cabin, the same one I used to visit every summer as a kid. The place where I learned to skip rocks, where she taught me to play cards, where she always made me feel like I mattered, even when the rest of the family acted like I didn't exist. I hadn't been there in almost 10 years, but now it was mine. She'd quietly changed her will after a visit from Talia, a visit where Talia had asked for an advance on her inheritance. Apparently Grandma didn't like that. She left her a handwritten note in the official file. Some people inherit money, others inherit the chance to finally live free. Jace gets both. I stared at that line for a long time. And I cried. The cabin needed work, but it was peaceful. Tucked near the edge of the forest, overlooking still water that glowed gold at sunset. I moved in that month. No internet, no neighbours for miles, just silence, the good kind, the healing kind. I kept the front door open most days, let the wind move through the rooms. I cleared out old furniture, fixed the porch steps, re-stained the deck. And little by little I began to feel like myself again. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes. I slept through the night. I cooked actual meals, not microwave dinners eaten over a laptop. I didn't realise how starved I'd been, not just for rest, but for respect, for stillness, for something real. But peace doesn't mean everything stays quiet. One morning I got a certified letter in the mail from my parents. It was typed formal and cold. The words were dressed in legalese but stripped of love. They were contesting Grandma Ruth's will, claiming I'd influenced her while she was vulnerable, that she was manipulated. It would have been laughable if it weren't so insulting. They didn't want the cabin. They wanted control. They wanted to punish me for escaping. I called the attorney. He laughed genuinely. They don't have a case, he said. Everything was documented, signed, notarized. Ruth was sharper than all of us. Still, it stung. They weren't sorry, they were vengeful. But I wasn't scared anymore. Instead of replying with rage or threats, I sent them a short email. If you want to fight over a cabin you never visited, you go ahead. I won't be spending another second of my life begging for love that should have come free. Good luck. They never replied. The weeks passed. I built routines. Morning coffee on the porch, reading before bed, long walks near the lake, and slowly the ache I carried began to ease. Sometimes I'd get texts from people I barely remembered, old classmates, distant cousins, even an old neighbour. Most said the same thing. I saw the story. I always wondered how you put up with them. I guess when someone finally stands up, it gives others permission to stop pretending too. Then one afternoon Ryan showed up. I was chopping wood out back when I saw his car pull up. He stepped out looking lighter, healthier. He held up a hand almost sheepish. I figured I owed you an apology and maybe a six-pack. We sat on the porch, beers sweating in our hands. I signed the divorce papers, he said. She tried to guilt me into staying. Said I was just like you, cold, selfish, unforgiving. I laughed. Takes one to know one, I guess. He looked out at the lake. You were never any of those things. You were the only one who saw the truth. I just wasn't ready to believe it. We sat there in silence for a while, and for the first time since the reunion I felt like someone had actually come back. Not to take, just to be here. The cabin became more than a place. It became a new start. I started journaling again, sketching, even signed up for an online class in photography once I set up internet. I printed some of the photos, hung them around the cabin, small, quiet reminders that I wasn't just surviving, I was building. The biggest photo, a black and white shot of the lake at dawn. A single bird cutting across the water. I called it freedom. I didn't block everyone. I still had Jen's number, my cousin who always kind of got it. One day she texted me, "Guess what? Talia's trying to become a healing coach now. Her page says she teaches people to reclaim power after betrayal." I nearly spit out my coffee. Some people don't grow, they just rebrand. But I didn't respond. She could do whatever she wanted. She could tell whatever version of the story made her feel powerful. Because I didn't need to clear my name anymore. I knew the truth, and so did anyone who mattered. Then one final letter arrived. No return address. Just one line written in shaky handwriting. I saw what you did, and I'm proud of you, GR. My breath caught. Grandma had written it before she passed. A note her attorney mailed on the anniversary of her death per her instructions. Even gone, she found a way to tell me I wasn't alone. People always say blood is thicker than water, but they forget the full quote. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose, the ones forged in honesty, loyalty, and love, are stronger than the ones we're born into. I didn't lose my family. They lost me. Because in the end, family isn't who shares your name. It's who shows up when no one's watching. It's who chooses you when there's nothing to gain. It's who never turns you into a transaction. I still have scars. There are days I flinch when my phone buzzes. Days I hear Mum's voice in my head whispering guilt like a lullaby. But then I remind myself I'm not the villain in their story. I'm the survivor. I'm the one who stood up, spoke out and said, this ends with me. And maybe, just maybe, someone else out there will hear this and realise they can end it too. Moral of the story. Family doesn't mean endless forgiveness. It doesn't mean bleeding for people who sharpen the knife behind your back. Being the strong one doesn't mean being the sacrificial one. Sometimes real love looks like walking away. Sometimes peace costs everything. And sometimes it's worth it. Every single time.